Oliver, back at it again. We got an exciting guest. Should be a good one. I know we keep changing locations and it seems like we're constantly on the move, but I think today was one I wanted to make sure I didn't have any phone booth backgrounds, any audio issues, because I'm really excited for this conversation. We have Sean from Cuts. Maybe Sean, I'll let you introduce yourself before we jump in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to do this. Sean Christman, been at Cuts for 8 years. Been there since the very beginning. Held a number of different roles here, all revolving around the need for a source of truth, source of data. That's really how I and the rest of the team here started Cuts. And so, that's spanned through marketing, that's spanned through customer service, product development, planning, strategy, brand, all of that. And so super excited to have this conversation today, and learn from you guys along the way too.
I think the audience is more excited to learn from you all. I mean, Cuts is one of the brands, especially in the e-commerce apparel space. Like, it's an amazing success story, and clearly you've seen it through. So, I mean, I'd love to start there. Like, how has the journey been? Go for over 8 years to get to this point. How'd you get here? What's broken along the way, and what do you think has led to some of that success, just as a starting point?
Yeah. 8 years is a long time. 8 years is not a long time. In the same breath. We've learned a lot over the past 8 years. The 8 years been a tumultuous time to build a brand. I like to say it's been, the hardest time to build a brand. It's also the only time I've built a brand, so that's easier to say. But yeah, we've been through a ton, and as many brands have. And what our main mission is, our main goal is, through all those points in time, we've got Facebook as an arbitrage, and it's never been it hasn't been adopted by the consumer yet. We've been through COVID, where online adoption just skyrocketed. We've been through post-COVID, where demand is incredibly finicky, and the realization that it's not going up and to the right forever. And then, bring us to 2025, and it has its own set of issues that we're dealing with. The biggest thing for us has just been resiliency. Has been resiliency and learning. We internally, have a checklist that we go through. If we can impact it, let's fix it. If we can't impact it, if we can fix it, let's fix it. If we can't fix it, let's mitigate it. And if we can't mitigate it, let's deal with it. And that checklist, we've hit all those buckets throughout these last 8 years. And having that mindset, not only individually as a leadership team, but across the team, has given us the ability to continue to grow, not only as a brand, but grow as individuals and grow within this direct-to-consumer space that is very fluid. And if you stop learning, that's when you stop existing in many ways.
Oh, wow. I think that was a great summary of what it's been like to be in e-com over the past decade or so. So definitely appreciate that insight. I mean, it's, to your point, not been easy, but also it's something that the ones that have done well have really put a masterclass on of how to be resilient. And it's great to see. I think Cuts has some great examples of that. So, I mean, let's start with, it wouldn't be our podcast if we didn't at least start with the tech. So what is your current tech stack, specifically on the supply chain and operation side of things?
Yeah. So from an ERP standpoint, we're moving to Fulfil. It's I think what brought us to that, and what is going to be a lot of what we talk about today, is source of truth, having a clean source of truth.
Where are you today, and like what are the things that you've and the conclusions you've come to that have got you to that point of moving to Fulfil in the first place?
Yeah, so we work with for the past couple of years we work with NetSuite. NetSuite has been our source of truth. And I think across direct-to-consumer brands, and this year, the last couple of years, could get bucketed into that.
Yeah.
Maintaining lean operations, maintaining fluid communication, cross-functional communication, is absolutely paramount to the success of a brand. The ability to make quick decisions based off of the same data. And that's really what brings us to Fulfil, is as we were continuing to refine that process, understanding the loops within our business, understanding the consistent decisions that need to be made, along with the ability to make ad hoc decisions. Moving to a platform that allows us to do that, like Fulfil, has the ability, is much more user friendly, is much more straightforward, is much less what I would say, to being a non-finance guy. It's non-finance guy friendly. So that's what brings us to Fulfil today. And there's a lot of things that I'm sure we'll get into that we're really excited about, that you guys, even since we signed on the dotted line, are bringing forward, continuing to bring forward new innovations within how brands can answer the right questions, because simply having all the data doesn't mean you can ask the right questions and answer the right questions. So that's our ERP today. What we do with that, we work a lot within it. Obviously, we're pulling things into spreadsheets, consistent reports, and data sets that we're analyzing on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. But yeah, that's more or less where we go to understand the heartbeat of our business.
Yeah, and how long have you been on NetSuite or implementing NetSuite and going through that initial phase?
So we've been on NetSuite for I think since 2021, 2022.
Okay.
And the reason I can't pinpoint the exact time is because I'm not in there. The team isn't in there as much as we should be. It's the finance notes that I've been sprinkling in it works well for that. But in terms of being the authority, the trusted source for what we all hop into, not only from an operations, but a merchandising, a demand planning, a growth and marketing standpoint, it didn't sink its teeth into our rhythm. It didn't find a good spot in there.
I find like your NetSuite advocates would say like you didn't have the right implementation partner, or you should have hired more like technical people, and you should have had a NetSuite system admin. I think like what's often missed there is that when you're buying it, that's not always made clear to you. So while smaller businesses like in this growth phase sometimes go for it, the thing that's never in the budget is like, well, in addition to all the licenses, which may or may not increase at year 1 or year 2 or year 3, I've seen that happen. It's the integration cost that's always like, I saw one brand that was 10 million where they didn't even have an integration sold to them as part of the plan. And so you've got like 3PLs and things are being done manually. So these will then come as surprise costs. And unfortunately, for someone to turn around and basically say, this is a terrible mistake, if you're the like head of finance that's driven for that decision, all in good reason, right? You made it's a piece of bad mistake that you're trying to reverse out of. So it's often very difficult for them to do that. But yeah, I think it shows a lot of courage to make a big decision, to make a shift. It's more common in the US though. Changing ERP, we're like so super cautious over here. It's like it's a once in a lifetime decision, and we will stick with whatever that decision was. But yeah, I definitely feel like there's a bit more chopping and changing.
And I think, Sean, you also hit the nail on the head. It's not just cost, which yes, of course, can be astronomical, but the flexibility. E-commerce specifically, it's like everything changes so fast. You now need to spin up this channel, this new warehouse. Okay, I've got these tariffs, so I have to be in these geographies. It's like every day there's something, especially in our world, that needs to get updated, and you don't want the system to be the limiting factor there. Even if you
Yeah.
can pay millions of dollars for a consultant to then update your instance, it's like, okay, I have to go through the whole process. It's a new integration, it's development, it delays things, it slows you down. A system should not be doing that. It should be enabling you to speed up and enabling to open whatever opportunity you need.
Totally. Yeah,
It,
as you're walking through that, I'm thinking all of the add-ons that were required just to work within the system. The team was much bigger internally when we were going through the NetSuite integration. The external team was much bigger. We had integration teams on retainer just to be able to work with the tool. Implementation took a long time, and the initial understanding for us was, those external integration partners would be at one time as we're going through integration. They stayed on until the very end.
as does tend to happen, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess one thing you mentioned there that was very interesting, you said internal team was bigger at the time of the implementation 4 years ago. Are you saying you've kind of been able to scale and grow and actually get the team smaller over the course of that time?
Yeah. Yeah, for a multitude of reasons, but the main reason that I'm pointing to there is the dedicated implementation process that it took to get up and running with a system like NetSuite required dedicated staff to be able to support that over a long period of time. And as we've been going through this implementation process, our go live date with Fulfil is next week. It's been a couple of months. It's been very straightforward, and it's been much more guiding than doing on our side. And part of that comes from maintaining clean data sets internally, understanding our data sources, but also the partners that you guys have on the team allowed us to continue to do our day job while we're going through this implementation process. And it alleviated a lot of, we could look at it dollars for dollars. What happens a lot of times when you're going through a process of changing a big system, internal process, or an internal system like NetSuite to Fulfil, you think about the changing costs. And Oliver, I think that's what you're pointing to a little bit, are those changing costs. No, I'm in a situation, I don't want to go through that again. It's kind of like moving. I'm just going to live here for the rest of my life because I don't want to go through the move again, right? It doesn't matter thinking about where I could be, closer to my friends, closer to my family, closer to the beach. I just don't want to move, right? That's the switching cost. And so that switching cost was, lowered incredibly through this process. And a lot of times you're having those introductory conversations. You're kind of sussing out the situation. Okay, I've been through this, spiel before. I've been through this pitch. But buying into it and then going through the process, it was seamless. As seamless as any, major overhaul integration could be.
You got the comparison as well. So you've done like a relatively rigid, like super structured and highly technical ERP approach. Like as a client implementing, you've also sorted all your master data to get through that. So a lot of the hard work that no one really thinks about with system change has been done. Like we see a similar thing where clients have implemented like a big PLM solution and like they've gone through trying to do all that data work. Actually, the data is in a really good format and we can move things across. And they're like, oh, you've moved the data so quickly. You're like, yeah, do you remember like how you had to drag all the colors out of your tech packs and like do all these other bits before? So it gets forgotten quickly. But yeah, it's actually those like second system moves are actually quite good projects for everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, we were talking about lean teams, maintaining, low overhead and being able to invest that in other areas of the business. Going through a process like this, it isn't just so that you can get the system integrated. What we found is you can run a smoother business. More people understand your data. Yes, there's that upfront cost, that upfront tax you have to pay to structure it, to pull it out of those tech packs, those bill of materials, understand the color code versus the color name, the style number versus what you call it on your website. but really that sets you up to be more informed, to be more cross-functional across departments,
Mm.
and set you up to be able to use the tool. So yes, it is there so that the systems can talk, and they don't break routinely. But also it's setting you up to be a more data-informed business, data-driven business, once you have that established.
I need you on all our projects. You're talking about it exactly the right way. It's I think you both touched on incredibly important points, which are very intentional. It's you want to be like working with the team directly in that you guys know your data the most. You know what's needed, what the long-term vision is, what will be needed in the future. So while the partners can be great and very helpful, in a lot of ways, if you have a great partner like Oliver who's helping and having that same mindset, but other times they can be introducing complexity or scope creep or not understanding what's actually needed from your business, and that's not their fault. They're not in your business. So it is great to kind of work with the team that understands that and knows the data intentionally. And then also, to your point, it's being able to set you up for that scalability and cleaning it up. And second time implementations can be far easier because you've done some of that initial work. So it is, yeah, exactly spot on.
What's the tech makeup inside Cuts? Like, who do you have like a formal tech team? Like, and how do technology decisions get made? And maybe with that, a little bit of like, what's the kind of philosophy towards the kind of platforms that you choose? Is there like a general, yeah, if we lined them all up, would there be like general themes of stuff that you're looking for?
Yeah, we don't have tech team proper. We don't have an internal tech department. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but we have the way that we run it is assessing and reassessing on a monthly and especially on a quarterly basis. And so what we're looking for is tools and solutions that are going to help us fulfill, bad pun, fulfill opportunities for us. Um, so what that looks like is we're really assessing at a business level, where do we have opportunity? Where do we have pockets of opportunity that we can go get? How do we minimize those risks
Mm.
that are associated with it, or minimize the costs that are associated with it? And that's where we get into the tech layer. That's where we understand, are there solutions that would enable this opportunity to come home? And as we're going through that assessment, we're looking at overlap, we're looking at understanding how we can maximize a tool that we might not be maximizing. And so it's a part of our opportunity assessment layer that allows us to reconsider and understand opportunities that we're currently paying for, or solutions that we're currently paying for, and how do we leverage those more. Um,
Any kind of company like planning structures that you're weaving that stuff into that make sure, having the right kind of meetings to surface the right prioritization, and even like something as simple as like, over what time frame do you normally plan your projects and hope to execute them?
yeah, yeah. So we're an apparel business. That's we sell physical goods to consumers and live in the fashion space. As much as we're not fashion forward, we live in that fashion space and we live on that fashion calendar. So we attach, and that's the longest lead item in our business is product development. So that's what we attach a lot of these opportunities to.
Okay.
That's where we're looking at a 6 month window, 6 months out. As we get closer, we break those down into uh, um, smaller chunks. So we're looking at quarters, which would be seasons.
Hmm.
And that's where we're taking the entire company on this same journey. Everybody's trying to live, as much as they're on different timelines, on different calendars, working on that same plan. Internally, we call it the master phasing plan. It's a 13-month calendar that gets everybody on the same clip. So we're doing in across that 13 months, we're not only looking ahead, but we're hindsighting a ton. And so monthly hindsight, quarterly hindsight, those are obviously held at different aggregated levels. But that's where we're assessing what has worked internally, externally. Um, how do we take the good and do better next time? How do we take the bad, learn from it, and do better next time? And that's where it trickles down, and we take it through each of those lenses. So I mentioned we're an apparel brand. That's one lens that we look through. We sell on our .com, so we're an e-commerce brand. That's a different lens that we look through. We advertise on social media. That's a different lens that we look through. Through each of those, there's different tactics. And at the core of that, looking through all those lenses is directly at our consumer. And so understanding what tactics, what processes, what systems enable us to provide a better experience for that consumer. And so we don't have, okay, this month, we got to reassess our tech stack. So let's pull all of our invoices. Let's understand where we're spending our money. Oh, shoot, that's right. We introduced this new system. We haven't used it yet. We've virtually eliminated all of that just through taking everything through our process. And so an ERP system, something that we're working in every single day, is obviously at the forefront of that. But as we're assessing new opportunities, we're understanding, how do we take that tool that we're working with, use it better, understand all of the data that's in it, what can we tease out of that data, and then we work to understand how we just answer better questions. How do we ask a better question, therefore answer a better question the next time around?
I love what you talked about in the sense that you all work off the same calendar, and I think it sounds so straightforward, and it obviously makes a ton of sense, but you rarely see that cross-functional collaboration. All of these teams have different priorities. It's all competing priorities. The way ops functions and what they care about is going to be different than merchandising and what they care about, and then, of course, finance and what they care about, and getting everyone to align behind that one shared calendar, shared vision, same focus. Like, how do you actually put that into practice? Because that is what really makes a successful kind of, I don't want to say just brand, like company, to make sure everyone is rowing in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to sound simple, and it's not a novel idea, but when done consistently, it really helps. And that's just hindsighting. That's getting into a rhythm of understanding what we just did. So in order to make that effective, you have to understand what you're going to do. So we're constantly talking about, what do we want to go do? How much is it going to cost? What's it going to be worth to us? And then how do we go do it? And what that process is doing is setting up expectations where if you're going to do something new, you're going to be wildly off the first time, but at least you have data points. We thought this was going to do X. It ended up doing Y. Okay, now Y is the new baseline. How do we get better than Y? And yeah, to your point, it is tough to get everybody on the calendar. It's tough to get marketing, who has a launch coming up in 2 weeks, to worry about a launch coming up in 2 weeks plus a year. But once you get on that rhythm and through that full process, ownership is changing hands. So early on, it's a ton of data analysis. It's a ton of operations. It's a ton of product. So a year out, we're looking at, let's take fall season this year versus fall season of 2026. For fall of 26, we're assessing what our expectations are for fall of 25. What were the decisions that we made to lead us to this plan? It's upon us. We're in it. How do we take what we've already done and do a better job next time, even though it hasn't fully completed yet? And that's where inviting those teams that are focused on the now into that conversation, leading that conversation, coming with clean data and saying, hey, if we were to do this again, I know we haven't even completely done it yet, but if we were to do this again, how would we do it differently? And internally here, while there are positions, while there are functions, while there are responsibilities that own marketing, merchandising, demand planning, you name it, we all collectively think of ourselves, we're all marketers. We're all merchandisers. We're all planners. We're all a part of finance. Now, we're asking different questions in those conversations, but when we're all on that same wavelength, that we're all trying to understand, how do we do a better job next time? There's no egos, there's no posturing, there's no forcing an idea to force an idea when it's all based off of this equal parts arts and science that comes along with fashion, comes along with planning.
And what tools are you using to drive some of that stuff? I know it's a bit like tactical and potentially in the weeds, but like just curious on like what tools you're using to keep everybody aligned behind the plan and bring all of those things through. Like great doing hindsight sessions. My thing is like we do all these retrospectives. I'm not in some of the retrospectives. Am I going to get the learnings, or do they just get lost into the ether with the team that do it? And like there seems to be so many opportunities now with like AI in meetings to then have the transcripts, to then get the summaries, to try and bring that stuff through. What have been your latest like thoughts on how to do that better?
Yeah. So we're starting to use all of that. Have been using all of that. But it's growing so much in 2025. The ease of use and the adoption internally to be able to use systems like that. So yeah, we're recording phone calls. We have prompts that we routinely use to make sure that this, as AI becomes more adopted, what we initially saw was, okay, now everybody has the ability to ask any question at any time. And rather than organizing the business, initial like scattershot approach to the business, you get, okay, I'm going to prompt within Shopify, now that they have their AI agent, what product do we need to bring back in stock in order to grow 40% this year, right? If everybody asks that question, it's going to come up with every different answer. And so it's adding some structure around that. And what we do within those hindsighting activities is we keep the questions consistent and high level. We want the conversation to drive forward. We want to make sure we come out of there that we can, even if somebody isn't in that conversation, they know what we're going to be talking about. They know the prompts and they can start thinking about that themselves. And so the delivery of that is the same. And then as far as calendar goes, as far as planning goes, we house all of that in Airtable. So, our business is seasonal, but it's incredibly cyclical. The same thing happens every year, which is great. It allows us to say, okay, this event is going to happen. This consumer, this consumer behavior is going to happen. Happens a lot around Q4, right? It's not us telling the consumer to buy. The consumer now just inherently knows, okay, I've got to buy, right? And so it allows us to take these chunks out of the year and say, okay, we all understand what happened last year. We've got our documentation. Now with AI, it's even cleaner. Down to the quote that we said, don't forget this next year. We can query for that. And it just allows us, it gives us that springboard to continue to grow as a brand, grow as individuals, grow as functions.
You're building that like shared brain of knowledge. Like one of the things we've done in the last few weeks is our call recorder takes the transcripts, PDFs them, and then puts them into our Airtable base. And then it looks at the email. If it's a client, it puts it all in against the email. And then likewise with like my sales CRM, it's doing a similar thing. And like the bit that I want to get to around that would even be on something like any meeting that's called a sprint retrospective. Take all of those transcripts, put them into a table with all the sprint retrospectives in, and then I can go in and go, what were we working on last year? And then is there any evidence in the following retrospectives that we've been implementing those things? So you're getting that just couldn't ever dream of doing that before. I think they're the exciting use cases. I thought I had a great memory, and then you start you start hitting up transcripts of things you said. You're like, oh my God, I really do only remember 10% of what happens in my life, if that. It's a tiny thing. So being able to pull on those details, particularly for the kind of work that you're doing, where yes, it is cyclical, but it means that it hurts even more. If you learn something for a really specific thing and then it comes back around, you're like, oh, this is like Groundhog Day. And it's like, you're then like, I can get way too emotional about the same thing happening again. We have that oh God, I wanted to fix that. and it sort of slips through the net. It's painful, isn't
Totally. Yeah, and it helps you understand where how often you contradict yourself. You say one thing, the team's off and running, we're accomplishing that. A month later you step in, you say something completely different, thinking that everybody's on the same wavelength. It's a great yeah, it puts you in check because all of that information's available. And so even in something like that, it helps you understand, okay, what information did I get between then and now that has me in
it?
this position, so convicted in this position. Um, the only thing that we know is, when we buy a purchase order, we're making a decision, and we know that we're going to be smarter by the time that that shows up. Um, that's the process of creating a physical good. But it's the assessment of why that happens. And what's not going to stop is creating that physical good, uh, but your sense of what is going to occur over that time period, that lead time that it's coming, um, with better data, with being able to record things, allows you to fine tune that and just continue to get better.
Yeah, it's pulling it's that qualitative data though as well. So like even something like supplier calls that you might have. So at the end of a season, you can look at a supplier and go, how did they perform? What was their sample hit rate? What was their like purchase orders? Did we get the POs in on time, or were they late? Did they miss their like internal deadlines? But then also having that qualitative data to say like, well, how's the relationship? How have they handled conflict? Like, where have they kind of gone the extra mile for us? So you can actually like bring some of that through. Whereas, by the time the product lands, you can't remember all the good things they did for you. So it's kind of bringing that back to give a more 360 view of things like suppliers. I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. With everything going on, it's amnesia is prevalent. We can all remember so much. We don't actually have amnesia, but you do. You forget so much, and especially on those different timelines, right? Internally, you're talking every day. As a leadership, you're meeting and downloading every single week. With a vendor, with a supplier, it might be, every other week. It might be monthly. You might talk to the leadership team quarterly. So yeah, being able to track and manage all of that, just to again make better decisions, has been a huge help.
Let's actually segue. You alluded to this, but obviously it's been a pretty interesting time to be in supply chain and producing physical goods and getting them into predominantly the U.S. But how has your team kind of navigated this? Obviously, I know your CEO took a pretty public stance, and it was impressive to see. And so, how have you all handled the recent times? Any advice for other e-commerce brands? And yeah, what does life look like now in this kind of post-tariff world? Not that we're done.
Yeah. We're fully still in it, and it'll probably continue for a while. I know there's some dates coming up in the next month that will hopefully add some validity, or some allow us to move forward with facts. The big lesson that we've learned through this time, and I think there's many cases like this, not specifically like this with regards to tariffs, but things that have happened over the past 8 years that have set us up for a time like this. What we've learned is, there's a couple of big things that your business, your supply chain needs to have to maneuver a situation like this. And those things are optionality, flexibility, and leverage. So I'll talk about each of those. So optionality, and really what I mean with this is being able to have options within your supply chain. That starts with understanding your data. So that starts with understanding how you what you can do with regards to country of origin, what you can do with regards to HST codes, what that means with regards to where you can deliver, and how you can import those goods. Having a good understanding of all of that. Flexibility, understanding uh, how understanding where your goods can be made and making sure that you have backup plans, you have other suppliers, making sure that you have the ability to produce your goods in multiple places. You're not finding yourself with a one and only solution to be able to create what you need to create. Flexibility also spans into marketing. If if you find yourself in a position with a product that can only be created in one spot, has a long lead time, you have to make decisions, months out, a year out, uh, but so much can change over the next couple of months. A 90-day stay doesn't help a lot of physical good brands. That's well within your lead time for a bunch of the things that you're creating. So it in many ways, it only adds more questions to the process. So, I mentioned earlier, everybody being a marketer and being able to say, okay, we have these goods. Here's how we can position these goods. Some of those goods might have just changed in COGS. The cost of those goods might have just changed. How do we bring something more forward? How do we do some promotion? How do we do some liquidation? Understanding, how you have an asset, or hopefully you have an asset already in your warehouse. That's your goods. How do you make the most out of those while playing catch up with getting more of those goods? And then the last point that is probably the biggest in terms of maintaining a long-term, flexible supply chain, well-organized supply chain is leverage. Leverage with your vendors. And the way that we've found to get leverage with your vendors is being a fantastic partner. It's having a great relationship. It's visiting those partners. It's really being transparent about what we're looking to accomplish as a business and bringing them on as a true partner rather than somebody that just makes our goods. And what that has allowed us to do over the course of this period of time specifically, also happened during COVID, also happens in great times as well, where we've got to expedite goods to get here, is you have a better relationship for asks. If you're constantly asking, there's going to be a shorter leash when you have a big ask for that. And so, it goes with any type of partner. But having a great relationship and understanding that there is give and takes, and as much as in this relationship, you got to give sometimes, you're going to have an ask, and being able to save those up. And across all of that, it's being able to have clean and clear, rich data, a common source of truth, to be able to make decisions across that. If we don't know how much our products cost, they're just here. If we don't know country of origin or HST code or any of that, it becomes this big activity to discover all of that before you can actually make decisions. So setting yourselves up, not anticipating that there's going to be black swan events, but just being ready for an event like this in case it happens, being well versed in not only your product, but your data and your marketing, so that you're well positioned to respond quickly if you need to, and also well positioned to not respond if that's the right answer as well.
I mean, prescient advice, it to your point sounds easy, but no one's thinking when things are going well, oh, I've got my supplier, it's cheap goods and my margin's good, let me go source other suppliers, or let me go make those investments. So it's really impressive when brands do, and obviously paid dividends in recent times. I think it's easier said than done, but important.
Night and day, I think you often feel that as a partner providing other services to a brand, where happened more kind of going back 10 years, but you have super high growth brand, maybe a younger founder, someone in the 20s, and they don't treat their vendors who are providing their goods with that right level of, they're not fostering those relationships, and they almost transition that into buying software and services, sort of treating you the same way, like they're trying to sort of bargain every little bit they can get off it, versus that partner mindset you described. I think that's just a key tenets of like any business that's going to go on and be successful. You have to feel like recognize you're part of an ecosystem where if we all do the right thing, we can all do really well, and like 1 + 1 does equal 3, rather than it's like, if I'm getting some, that means you're not, or whatever, playing that game.
And I'd like to say that was by design. None of us came from a fashion background. When we started Cuts, that was probably the only role that we didn't have was anybody on the product team. And so it was out of necessity that we learned product, that we established a relationship. In the first year of manufacturing, we were at our factory monthly. And when we had factories overseas, that was at least every other month. And part of that was so that we could learn. Part of that was we got to the point where we couldn't explain it without showing them physically. And through that, developed a fantastic face-to-face relationship that's allowed us, we still have many of those relationships today. And it truly is a partnership. It's they're invested in our success because it means success for them, and we're the exact same way. And so, yeah, that common ground, taking the time to be able to, establish a relationship that's beyond just the purchase order, that transaction, it pays dividends in a time like this.
Yeah, for sure. Especially now as well, I'm sure you're like starting to branch out more and more with product and I know you started like with a very simple philosophy around product, but it feels like as you're expanding into different lines and the assortment's growing, you're getting more into like more technical fabrics and all that kind of stuff. So it is way more than buying. It's like you're often leaning on them for some of that innovation as well.
Totally. They're our eyes. Just as much as we're looking in the market, we have them in there as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So, I mean, in the last 10 minutes, we always like to leave reader or listeners with a like super tactical information. So obviously you've given some great insight of how Cuts approaches some of these conversations, but what's advice you can give to other brands, things that they can help implement or do themselves navigating these situations? You have a lot of experience with these supply chains in uncertain times. So what's advice for other brands?
I'd say build a solid foundation. Solid foundation of systems and processes. Those are what you're going to leverage more than any other tactic that you're going to bring into the business. A lot of times, and this is a fantastic call, because usually I'm on with it's like a marketing podcast or something like that, where we are getting really tactical, and we're not so much talking about how do you plan for next year as much as how do you plan for later this afternoon or next week, right? And so building a solid foundation, having systems and processes that work for you, and what I mean by that is take some of that report generation time. Turn it into analysis time. Set yourself up to be able to see clean data consistently. Have consistent conversations, because that's where real growth comes from. You can have the most ambitious goals. You can ladder that up in a simple Excel spreadsheet that says, in order to do this number, we need this many units, and we need to spend this much on Facebook. But the underlying timelines, the underlying assumptions, risks that come along with going after that opportunity, it's difficult to see without having rich data, without having great communication, an operating rhythm. I'm never an advocate for more meetings, but having the right meetings, the right conversations can be paramount to putting together a full season rather than a good week or a good month.
100% agree. I think those are very tactical and definitely will help brands, if not immediately, at least for the long term, as you're saying. I think a lot of brands are very, I don't want to say short-sighted, but it is just immediate problems. Marketing, it's this, it's not how am I setting myself up to be a lasting brand. And I think everything you've talked about today shows that from the ground up, from the beginning, your team really has thought about that. That is the thing, which is impressive.
I mean, there's some stuff in here as well. Like you talked at the very top about like living from the calendar, and you said, and that's a good thing. I think that kind of demonstrate like I see some people almost fighting against the calendar. They're like, oh God, this retail calendar, why is it all structured like this? And we want to do this now, or, we want to launch trousers in June when we're having a heat wave. Like you need to really just stop and go, right, this is actually the way retail works. It's been running this way for a really long time. We can't change anything about it. How do we make our business model and the flows and everything that we're going through? And so I think what you were saying about, planning cycle of 6 months, and that is really your critical path from initial idea to like landing a season, trying to make projects sit within that. I think that's a really strong takeaway that anyone could be thinking about, particularly if they're in that early phase and they're not from a fashion background, like you guys weren't either, but you've still recognized like what industry are we in? And that's also something that's like totally unique to fashion. Software businesses outside ecom, you don't ever think about like, oh, we're coming into Q4, we need to be thinking differently and like adjusting our forecasts and things. But it's one of the retailisms, isn't it?
Yeah. The ability. What we do is, I mentioned our business is cyclical, and so all of those consistent things, we want the systems to work for us. We want the systems, the meetings, the QBRs to prompt us. Okay, now it's time to talk about Q4. Now it's time to think about Q4. Here's all of the data. Let's analyze this. If we ever see something that's chaotic, if we start to find chaos within our business where it shouldn't be, we built a system for it, a process for it. Not over the top. We're not talking about bringing on a ton of new tech or anything like that. We're just setting ourselves up so it's not chaotic the next time. Because us not coming from a fashion background was a huge asset for us. There are those, defined things. There is defined holidays. There's defined seasons. There's a wholesale calendar you got to get on if you want to be a part of wholesale. But having that structure allows us to think outside the box, allows us to say, okay, how do we pull from a different industry and bring that into the fashion industry? And that's really part of what's been instrumental in us having success over a long period of time is understanding the walls that we got to work within, but how do we expand those just a little bit? How do we think a little bit differently and not give in to industry standard or here's how it's always been, because those people that think like that will live within the box. If you put yourself in a box, you'll live within it.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, that was great. Well, Sean, I mean, I know we're coming up on time. I really appreciate
How are you going to wrap up your blog post, Kabir?
I mean, it's right. You've given us a lot to work with here. I mean, honestly, anyone who was listening definitely got some interesting insights into supply chain, into how to really build a scalable and long-term brand. So I think this was amazing. And I feel like we barely scratched the surface. You have so much more insight. We mentioned wholesale. I mean, getting omni-channel. We've talked about that before, but we'd love to get your insight. So hopefully we can get you on again soon.
Yeah, anytime. This was a lot of fun. Like I was saying, usually I'm trying to pull people out of tactical mode when I'm on a call like one of these. So anytime you guys want to talk ops, talk structure, talk process, I'm all in.
Yeah, well, I saw there's a burgeoning Substack potentially coming. I've got my eyes on that. Let's see. I'm keen to hear some of those things get out into the world. I think there's a real lack of ops people from that background sharing what's really going on behind the scenes. So. Yeah, curious to see you developing that.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Yeah, another outlet just to build a little bit of a community. I'm big on being able to learn from folks too, right? I understand it the Cuts way. I understand it through conversation how other brands are doing it. But this shouldn't be a walled garden. This is, I think solutions like Fulfil, conversations, podcasts like this, there's a huge community of operators and ops folks, supply chain folks out there that might feel a little in the dark and they're alone in a lot of this stuff. But yeah, it's uh, exciting stuff to talk about if you're the right person.
But yeah, I don't think most people would say it's exciting, but this audience, us three, definitely do. And so, no, it was a great conversation. Appreciate it.